Marcus, a black police officer, patrols a deserted highway on a quiet afternoon. The sun beats down on the empty road, creating shimmering mirages in the distance. His radio crackles with occasional chatter, but it's been an uneventful shift. Suddenly, a car appears on the horizon, quickly growing larger as it speeds towards him. Marcus's trained eye estimates the vehicle is moving well above the speed limit. As the car approaches, Marcus notices something that makes him tense up. The rear windshield is plastered with stickers bearing racist slogans and symbols. He takes a deep breath, steeling himself for what might be a difficult encounter. Without hesitation, he flips on his lights and sirens, signaling the speeding car to pull over. The vehicle, driven by a middle-aged man named Ethan, slows down and comes to a stop on the shoulder of the road. Marcus approaches cautiously, one hand resting near his holster out of habit. He reaches the driver's side window and introduces himself. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Officer Marcus Johnson. Could you please turn off your engine?" Ethan, visibly nervous, complies with the request. He starts to explain his speeding, words tumbling out in a rush. "Officer, I know I was going a bit fast, but I'm late for an important meeting and dash." Marcus cuts him off, his voice calm but firm. "Sir, I understand you're in a hurry, but speeding puts everyone on the road at risk." He pauses, then makes a decision that will change both their lives. "Instead of writing you a ticket right away, I'd like to have a conversation with you. Would that be all right?" Surprised by this unexpected turn, Ethan nods hesitantly. Marcus leans against the car, positioning himself so he can see Ethan clearly. He begins to speak about prejudice, sharing personal experiences that have shaped his life as a black man in America. As Marcus talks, Ethan's initial defensiveness begins to waver. The officer's words paint a vivid picture of the challenges and fears he faces daily. Marcus mentions his children, explaining the constant worry he feels for their safety in a world that often judges them unfairly. This revelation causes Ethan to pause. For the first time, he sees the man behind the badge, not just an authority figure, but a father with the same concerns and love for his family as anyone else. The conversation has only just begun, but already, the dynamic between them has shifted, opening the door for a deeper understanding. As Marcus continues to speak, his words transport both men to pivotal moments in his past. He recounts a particularly painful memory from his teenage years. "I was walking through an upscale neighborhood, just minding my own business," Marcus begins, his voice steady but tinged with old hurt. "Suddenly, police cars surrounded me. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting at me to get on the ground." Ethan listens intently, his brow furrowed. Marcus continues, "They handcuffed me, searched me roughly, all because someone reported a suspicious person in the area. That person was me, a kid walking home from basketball practice." This vivid account hits Ethan hard. He shifts uncomfortably in his seat, trying to reconcile the story with his own beliefs. "But surely," he interjects, "the police were just doing their job, protecting the neighborhood?" Marcus shakes his head. "They were acting on assumptions, Ethan. Assumptions based on nothing but the color of my skin." Ethan falls silent, processing this. He thinks back to his own father's teachings, the warnings about those people, and the importance of protecting our own. For the first time, he considers how those lessons might have shaped his worldview. Marcus senses Ethan's internal struggle and presses on. He shares another story, this time about his younger brother. He was driving home late one night when he got pulled over. The officer approached with his gun already drawn. My brother, terrified, made a sudden move to get his ID. The officer nearly shot him, Ethan, for reaching for his wallet. Ethan's face pales. He tries to imagine his own son in that situation, the fear and helplessness he would feel. Marcus's words are forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about the world and his place in it. "These aren't isolated incidents," Marcus explains. "This is the reality many of us live with every day. The constant fear, the need to be extra careful, to teach our children how to survive encounters that should be routine." As Marcus speaks, Ethan finds his defenses crumbling. The certainty he once felt about his beliefs begins to waver. He's starting to see the world through Marcus's eyes, and it's a perspective that challenges everything he thought he knew. The conversation has moved beyond a simple traffic stop. It's become a moment of reckoning for Ethan, a chance to question long-held beliefs and consider a different reality. And for Marcus, it's an opportunity to create understanding where there was once only ignorance and fear. The conversation shifts as Marcus begins to talk about fatherhood. His voice softens, filled with both love and concern. You know, Ethan, being a dad changes everything. My kids are my world, but I worry about them constantly. Ethan nods, relating to this universal aspect of parenthood. Marcus continues, but my worries go beyond the usual stuff. I have to teach my kids things other parents might not even think about. He describes a recent conversation with his son. I had to explain to him why he can't play with toy guns outside, even though his friends do. I had to teach him what to do if he's ever stopped by the police. Keep his hands visible, move slowly, announce every action before he does it. Ethan listens, his face a mix of confusion and dawning realization. Marcus goes on, these aren't just precautions, Ethan. They're survival skills in a world that often sees my boy as a threat before seeing him as a child. This strikes a chord with Ethan. He thinks of his own son, the freedom and innocence he takes for granted. For the first time, he truly grasps the weight of what Marcus is sharing. I have a son too, Ethan says, his voice quiet. I've never had to teach him things like that. I've never even thought about it. Marcus nods, acknowledging Ethan's realization. That's the thing about privilege, Ethan. It's often invisible to those who have it. The two men fall into a thoughtful silence. Ethan breaks it, asking, how do you deal with it? The fear, the unfairness of it all? Marcus sighs. It's not easy, but I focus on change, on making the world a little better for my kids, for all kids. He tells Ethan about a community event he's organizing, focused on diversity and inclusion. It's a chance for people to listen to each other, to understand different experiences. Would you consider coming? Ethan hesitates. The idea makes him uncomfortable, challenges his usual routines and beliefs. But something has shifted in him during this conversation. He finds himself nodding slowly. Yeah, I think I might. As they continue talking, the connection between them grows stronger. They're no longer just a cop and a speeder, or a black man and a white man. They're fathers, sharing hopes and fears for their children's futures. This common ground becomes a bridge, spanning the divide that once seemed insurmountable between them. Marcus leans against Ethan's car, his posture relaxed but his eyes intense. He decides to share a story that's been weighing on him. I had a friend, James. Great guy, hardworking. He applied for a promotion at work, had all the qualifications, more experience than anyone else. But he didn't get it. Ethan listens, wondering where this is going. Marcus continues, James found out later that his boss passed him over because he thought James wouldn't fit in with the executive team. All because of the color of his skin. This hits Ethan hard. He's always believed that hard work was all it took to succeed. The idea that someone could be denied an opportunity despite their qualifications challenges his worldview. That's not right, Ethan says, his voice unsteady. Marcus nods. It happens more often than you'd think, and it's not always that obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, but the impact is just as real. Ethan falls silent, his mind racing. He thinks about his own workplace, wondering if he's ever unknowingly contributed to such unfairness. The thought makes him uncomfortable. Sensing Ethan's internal struggle, Marcus asks, what about you, Ethan? What shaped your views on race? Ethan hesitates, then speaks. My dad, I guess. He always said we needed to look out for our own, that other people were a threat. He pauses, realizing how this sounds out loud. I never really questioned it before. Marcus nods, understanding. It's not easy to challenge what we've been taught, especially by our parents. But it's important to think for ourselves, to question our beliefs. Ethan agrees, feeling a mix of shame and a strange sense of liberation. I've never really talked about this stuff before. It's eye-opening. As they continue to talk, Ethan finds himself opening up more. He shares his fears, his misconceptions, and his growing realization that the world is more complex than he once believed. Marcus listens without judgment, offering insights and gentle challenges to Ethan's assumptions. He can see the change happening in real time. Ethan's defensive posture relaxing, his eyes showing curiosity instead of fear. By the end of their conversation, Ethan is visibly different from the man who was first pulled over. He looks at Marcus with new respect and understanding. "I've got a lot to think about," he admits. Marcus smiles. That's all anyone can ask for. Being willing to think, to question, to learn. It's a start. As their conversation winds down, both men realize they've experienced something profound. What began as a routine traffic stop has become a moment of transformation, challenging long-held beliefs and opening the door to new understanding. The conversation between Marcus and Ethan reaches a critical point. Marcus, sensing the shift in Ethan's perspective, decides to make a bold move. "Ethan, I mentioned earlier about a community event I'm organizing. It's about bringing people together, sharing experiences, and breaking down barriers. Would you consider coming?" Ethan hesitates, his internal conflict visible on his face. The old Ethan would have dismissed such an invitation outright. But the man sitting in the car now is not the same person who was pulled over earlier. I don't know," Ethan stammers. "It's not really my kind of thing." Marcus nods understandingly. "I get it. It can be uncomfortable stepping out of our usual circles. But that's how we grow, how we learn to see the world differently." Ethan falls silent, weighing the decision. He thinks about the stories Marcus shared, the pain and injustice he never fully understood before. He thinks about his own son and the world he'll inherit. Finally, Ethan takes a deep breath. "Okay," he says, his voice quiet but firm. "I'll come. I can't promise anything, but I'll be there." Marcus smiles, genuine appreciation in his eyes. "That's all I can ask for, Ethan. Just showing up, being willing to listen and learn. That's huge." They exchange contact information, and Marcus provides details about the event. As they prepare to part ways, Ethan feels a mix of emotions. Apprehension about stepping into unknown territory, but also a strange sense of hope. Marcus returns to his patrol car, feeling inspired and cautiously optimistic. He's seen firsthand the power of open dialogue, how a simple conversation can plant the seeds of change. As Marcus drives away, Ethan remains in his car, lost in thought. He looks at the racist stickers on his windshield, seeing them with new eyes. With a sudden decision, he begins to peel them off, each removal feeling like shedding a layer of his old self. Ethan starts his car, his mind racing with everything that's transpired. He's not sure what the future holds, but he knows something fundamental has shifted within him. The road ahead seems uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it also feels full of possibility. As he drives home, Ethan realizes he's at a crossroads. The event looms in his future, a tangible step towards change. He's nervous, unsure of what to expect, but there's also a growing determination to see this through. Ethan understands that this decision could alienate some of his old friends, maybe even family. But the conversation with Marcus has awakened something in him. A desire to be better, to understand more, to make a difference. The decision to attend the event is more than just agreeing to show up. For Ethan, it's the first step on a new path, one that challenges everything he thought he knew about himself and the world around him. The day of the community event arrives. Marcus stands at the podium, surveying the diverse crowd gathered in the community center. His eyes scan the room, searching for one face in particular. Finally, he spots Ethan, sitting nervously near the back, looking out of place but determined. Marcus begins his presentation, his voice steady and passionate. "Today, we're here to talk about empathy and active listening. These aren't just buzzwords, they're tools for building understanding and breaking down barriers." As Marcus speaks, he weaves in personal stories, statistics, and interactive exercises. The audience engages, sharing their own experiences and perspectives. Ethan listens intently, his discomfort slowly giving way to curiosity. During a group discussion, Ethan hears first-hand accounts of discrimination from people in his community. A young woman describes being followed in stores. An elderly man recounts being denied a loan despite perfect credit. Each story chips away at Ethan's preconceptions. Marcus notices Ethan's growing engagement. He catches his eye, offering an encouraging nod. Ethan straightens in his chair, feeling a mix of shame for his past beliefs and a growing resolve to do better. As the event progresses, Marcus introduces an exercise in perspective-taking. Participants are asked to share a time they felt judged unfairly. The room falls silent as people contemplate their experiences. To everyone's surprise, Ethan stands up. His voice shaky but determined, he begins to speak. I've always been the one doing the judging. I never stopped to think about how it felt on the other side. He pauses, taking a deep breath. But today, listening to all of you, I'm starting to understand. And I'm sorry. I want to do better. The room is silent for a moment, then erupts in supportive applause. Marcus beams from the podium, seeing the tangible result of that roadside conversation. After the event, people gather in small groups, continuing discussions. Ethan finds himself in conversation with a diverse group of community members. He listens more than he speaks, absorbing new perspectives and challenging his old ways of thinking. Marcus approaches Ethan as the crowd begins to disperse. "I'm glad you came," he says, extending his hand. Ethan shakes it firmly. "Thank you for inviting me. I have a lot to think about." As they part ways, both men feel the weight of what's transpired. For Marcus, it's confirmation that change is possible, one conversation at a time. For Ethan, it's the beginning of a journey, one that will challenge him, but also open up a world of new understanding and connections. The community event marks a turning point, not just for Ethan and Marcus, but for the broader community. It's a step towards bridging divides and fostering understanding in a world that desperately needs it. In the weeks following the community event, Marcus and Ethan's unlikely friendship begins to take root. They exchange text messages, sharing thoughts and experiences. Ethan, eager to learn more, asks questions he never dared to before. Marcus, patient and understanding, provides insights and resources. Their connection extends beyond digital communication. They meet for coffee, discussing everything from their children's school activities to the latest community initiatives. Ethan, once closed off to different perspectives, now actively seeks them out. Marcus, inspired by the positive change he's witnessed in Ethan, decides to expand his efforts. He organizes a series of workshops on empathy and racial understanding aimed at both law enforcement and civilians. To his surprise and delight, Ethan volunteers to help. "I've got connections in the business community," Ethan explains. "Maybe I can help get more people involved." Marcus welcomes the offer, recognizing the potential impact of having someone like Ethan as an ally. Together, they work on outreach, crafting messages that resonate with people who might be hesitant to engage with such topics. As news of their collaboration spreads, the response is largely positive. Local media picks up the story, framing it as an example of bridging divides. Marcus and Ethan find themselves invited to speak at schools and community groups. However, not everyone is pleased with this turn of events. Ethan begins to receive messages from old acquaintances, questioning his new associations. Some are merely curious, others openly hostile. One evening, Ethan receives a call from a childhood friend, now part of a white supremacist group. The conversation is tense, filled with veiled threats and accusations of betrayal. Ethan, shaken but resolute, stands his ground. He confides in Marcus about the growing pressure from his old circles. Marcus listens with concern, offering support but also warning Ethan about the potential dangers. "This work isn't easy," Marcus says. "It challenges people's worldviews. Some folks aren't ready for that challenge." Ethan nods, understanding the gravity of his choices. "I can't go back to who I was," he says firmly. "I won't." As they continue their work, both men remain vigilant. The workshops gain momentum, attracting diverse participants. Ethan's transformation becomes a powerful testimony, encouraging others to examine their own biases. But beneath the surface of their success, a current of tension builds. The threats against Ethan escalate, extending to his family. Marcus, drawing on his law enforcement experience, advises Ethan on safety measures. Despite the challenges, neither man considers backing down. They've come too far, seen too much positive change to give up now. But as they plan their next steps, both Marcus and Ethan know they're walking a precarious path, one that will test their resolve and the strength of their newfound friendship. The success of Marcus and Ethan's collaboration brings unwanted attention from extremist groups. Ethan, once considered one of their own, is now labeled a traitor. The threats escalate from vague warnings to specific, menacing messages. One afternoon, Ethan is approached by two men he once called friends. They corner him in a parking lot, their faces hard with anger and disappointment. "You're turning your back on your own kind," one of them growls. "We thought you were better than this." Ethan stands his ground, but his voice wavers. "I'm not turning my back on anyone. I'm trying to make things better for everyone." The men scoff, making it clear that Ethan's new path is seen as a betrayal. They leave him with a warning: "Think about your family, Ethan. Some people aren't as understanding as we are." Shaken, Ethan calls Marcus, who listens with growing concern. "This is serious, Ethan," Marcus says. "We need to consider involving the authorities." But Ethan hesitates. He's torn between his fear for his family's safety and his commitment to the cause he and Marcus have been building. "If I back down now, everything we've worked for, it'll all be for nothing." Marcus understands Ethan's dilemma but emphasizes the need for caution. "Your safety comes first. We can find other ways to continue our work." As they discuss their options, Ethan receives a series of text messages. Photos of his house, his wife's workplace, his son's school. The message is clear: they're being watched. Ethan's resolve wavers. He thinks about the life he had before, the comfort of fitting in, the simplicity of not questioning the status quo. For a moment, he's tempted to give in, to return to his old ways for the sake of peace. But then he remembers the stories he's heard, the people he's met through his work with Marcus. He thinks about the change he's seen in himself and others. The choice becomes clear. "I can't go back, Marcus," Ethan says, his voice firm despite his fear. "But I don't know how to move forward either." Marcus nods, understanding the weight of Ethan's decision. "We'll figure it out together," he assures him. "But we need to be smart about this." They decide to reach out to local law enforcement and community leaders, seeking support and protection. As they formulate a plan, both men know they're entering dangerous territory. The threat is no longer just to their work, but to their lives and the lives of those they love. Despite the growing danger, Ethan and Marcus remain committed to their cause. They understand that their partnership, a living example of change and reconciliation, has become a powerful symbol, one that inspires hope in some and provokes anger in others. As they prepare to face the challenges ahead, both men realize that their journey has become about much more than personal growth or community workshops. It's become a stand against hatred and division, a fight for the kind of world they want their children to inherit. The tension that has been building finally erupts on a warm Saturday afternoon. Marcus and Ethan are scheduled to speak at a community rally promoting unity and understanding. As they arrive at the park, they're met with a scene of chaos. A group of white supremacists, including some of Ethan's former associates, have gathered to protest the event. They carry signs with hateful slogans and shout angry rhetoric. On the other side, supporters of Marcus and Ethan's work have formed a counter-protest. Marcus, drawing on his police training, quickly assesses the situation. "This could get ugly fast," he mutters to Ethan. "We need to try to defuse this." Ethan nods, his face pale but determined. They approach the center of the confrontation, hoping their presence will calm both sides. As they near the crowd, insults and accusations fly. The supremacists focus their ire on Ethan, calling him a race traitor and worse. Ethan flinches at the words, but keeps moving forward. Marcus takes the lead, his voice calm but authoritative. "We're here to talk, not fight. Everyone needs to take a step back and breathe." For a moment, it seems to work. The shouting dies down as people on both sides recognize Marcus and Ethan. But the calm is short-lived. One of the supremacists, a man Ethan recognizes as a former friend, breaks from the group and charges towards Marcus. "You brainwashed him," he yells, his face contorted with rage. Without thinking, Ethan steps in front of Marcus, shielding him from the attacker. The man stops short, surprised by Ethan's action. "No one brainwashed me, Tom," Ethan says, his voice steady. "I opened my eyes. I changed. And you can too." The words hang in the air, creating a momentary lull in the chaos. But it's broken when someone from the back of the crowd throws a bottle. It shatters near Marcus and Ethan, sending glass flying. Suddenly, the scene erupts into violence. Punches are thrown, people are shoved. Marcus and Ethan find themselves in the middle of a melee, trying to separate combatants and protect those around them. In the midst of the chaos, Ethan sees Tom pull out a knife. Time seems to slow as Tom lunges towards Marcus, who's focused on helping someone who's fallen. Ethan doesn't hesitate. He throws himself between Tom and Marcus, feeling a sharp pain as the knife catches his arm. He stumbles but manages to knock Tom off balance. Marcus turns just in time to see Ethan fall. He rushes to his friend's side, using his body to shield Ethan from further harm. The sound of police sirens cuts through the noise of the fight. As law enforcement arrives to break up the conflict, Marcus tends to Ethan's wound. "You didn't have to do that," Marcus says, his voice thick with emotion. Ethan, grimacing through the pain, manages a small smile. "Yes, I did. That's what friends do." As the paramedics take over and the police restore order, Marcus and Ethan exchange a look of understanding. This conflict has tested their resolve and the strength of their unlikely friendship. But it has also shown them the real-world consequences of their work, both the dangers and the profound impact they can have. In the aftermath of the violent confrontation, Marcus and Ethan find themselves in the hospital emergency room. Ethan's arm is being treated for the knife wound, while Marcus paces nearby, still processing the day's events. As the adrenaline wears off, the full weight of what transpired hits them both. Ethan breaks the tense silence. "I never thought it would come to this," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't regret it. Not for a second." Marcus stops pacing and looks at his friend. "You put yourself in danger for me, Ethan. I don't know how to thank you for that." Ethan shakes his head. "No need for thanks. This is bigger than just us now." As they talk, a police officer enters to take their statements. The officer informs them that several arrests have been made, including Tom, the man who attacked them. The news brings a mix of relief and sadness. Once they're alone again, Ethan makes a decision. "I can't go back to my old life, Marcus. Not after this. I want to use my voice, my experience, to make a real difference." Marcus nods, a plan already forming in his mind. "I think I know how we can do that." Over the next few weeks, as Ethan recovers, they work together to launch a bold new initiative. They create a program that pairs former extremists with the communities they once targeted, fostering dialogue and understanding. Ethan becomes the face of the campaign, sharing his journey from bigotry to enlightenment. His story, coupled with the dramatic events at the rally, captures national attention. Media outlets clamor for interviews, and speaking invitations flood in. Marcus, preferring to work behind the scenes, focuses on expanding the program and ensuring its effectiveness. He develops training modules for law enforcement, teaching them how to engage with communities more empathetically. Their work gains momentum, attracting support from unexpected quarters. Politicians from both parties endorse the initiative. Funding pours in from private donors and government grants. But the most significant change is happening at the grassroots level. Former extremists, inspired by Ethan's example, begin to come forward, seeking redemption and a chance to make amends. Communities that were once targets of hate open their doors, cautiously at first, then with growing enthusiasm. As their program expands nationally, Marcus and Ethan find themselves at the forefront of a movement. What began as a chance encounter on a highway has evolved into a force for change, challenging long-held prejudices and bringing people together across seemingly insurmountable divides. 1 year after the rally incident, Marcus and Ethan stand together at a national conference, preparing to address an audience of thousands. Before they step on stage, Ethan turns to Marcus. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" he asks. Marcus smiles, shaking his head. "Never, but I'm glad it did." As they walk out to thunderous applause, both men realize that their journey is far from over. There will be more challenges, more conflicts. But they face the future with hope, knowing that change is possible, one conversation, one person at a time. Their story becomes a powerful testament to the possibility of transformation and the strength of unlikely friendships. It serves as a beacon of hope in a divided world, proving that even the deepest rifts can be bridged with courage, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to understanding.